Am I the asshole for asking a family with a small child to keep it down on a red-eye flight? Edit, I had noise-canceling headphones and I could still hear the kid. Apparently, I need to double up on noise-canceling headphones and earplugs next time. I'm still failing to register why this family wasn't entitled to have to be honest, but I can accept that I didn't approach the topic in the most diplomatic manner. Caught a red-eye flight overseas and was seated next to a couple with a small child who inexplicably didn't fall asleep till 2 in the morning my time. This kid kept on talking loudly in complete sentences to her parents, and as a finicky sleeper, I finally got fed up and said to the mother, "Can we try and keep it down?" The mother responded, "Are you serious right now?" And I replied, "Yes, I am." They then proceeded to ignore me and let this kid talk loudly for another hour till they finally decided to conk out more than 3/4 through our flight. I think the sheer audacity and lack of consideration for other travelers is ridiculous, but am I missing something here? Babies, I understand. Kids with special needs, I understand. But kids who can engage in full, complete conversations? I'm failing to register why these parents can't ask their child to use her indoor voice. But Otto, I'm not a parent, so was it within reason for me to make such a request? Or am I the asshole? Not the asshole. All these YTS are wild. It's an international overnight flight, which means the lights were probably off in the cabin and half the passengers were trying to sleep. Original poster made a reasonable request, and the parents could have at least tried to get their kid to wind down a little or ask them to talk quieter, rather than cop an attitude. Edit. Added not the asshole to top in spaces for the other one to get it counted properly. Exactly this. I really wonder how often a lot of these people fly overnight. I have taken my autistic child on many overnight flights. She's never perfect, but if she were being too loud in this context, I'd be very visibly trying to keep her quiet, not having a whole full volume conversation with her. If that means letting her spend 6 straight hours on the iPad and dosing her with melatonin before the flight, then that's what's happening. I remember an absolute nightmare of a red-eye flight when they were still making people wear masks overnight, and it was really, really rough because she just couldn't sleep that way and was getting increasingly cranky. It happens. But passengers would have at least seen us trying to keep her calm and quiet. It's also one of those scenarios that could be made 1,000 times better by the parent saying, "I'm so sorry, we will try, but he has a hard time on flight, so I can't promise anything." Even just admitting the situation helps. Your comment is going to register as you're the asshole. You should separate the letters so the judgment is correct. Yep, agree. No reason parents couldn't have told the kid that when the lights are out, it's so people can sleep. So now it's time to try to be quiet. Just spent the weekend with a 2-year-old well on his way to complete sentences. He also has a 10-minute tantrum when I gave him the banana he requested and selected. Speaking is not a developmental marker for rational, especially when exhausted but unable to sleep. Bananas seem to have an irrational power to enrage any child. I swear, no other fruit can bring out the devil like a bendy yellow. Attempting to shush or regulate their behavior is different than making 0 attempts at all. Yep. My 3-year-old will whip out complex sentences and 4-syllable words. He will also absolutely lose his shit if, in attempting to peel the banana he requested, it accidentally breaks in 2. Speech does not equate to the ability to regulate emotions and listen to logical requests. Replacement bananas are not acceptable. Neither is cutting the banana in pieces to start with. There is only one suitable banana. Yup. Loads of kids are well into full sentences around 2.5, but still a few years away from effectively hushing their voices. Half the time, it's not even the volume that's a problem anyway, it's that toddler/preschool aged voice pitches carry extra. I understand the annoyance, but it's hardly inexplicable or even super unusually out of line for an overnighter. Yeah, I have a 2-year-old who speaks in full sentences who I also recently had to get to sleep in an unfamiliar place. He spent the entire time commenting on things and asking questions about the new environment. If I didn't respond, he'd just repeat what he said louder and louder until I did. If I mentioned it was time for bed, he'd yell no. This was in a dark room with no other people present. I can't imagine how stressful that would be on a plane, and it would definitely look like I wasn't trying to get him to sleep. Not the asshole. Parent here and I go out of my way to have my kids not be a disturbance. I was also annoyed by a grown set of people a few rows behind me just jawing away at the top of their lungs on an international flight a couple of weeks ago. No one multiple rows ahead needs to hear about your trials and tribulations with men in your Christian dating group. That's easy. Start making comments/kibitzing their conversation. When they complain, tell them, "Oh, I figured you were talking so loud that anyone could join in. They will get quieter." A single lady who wasn't on the flight would like to know. Do you remember any of the details? Sometimes I feel like these loud people just weren't taught others have feelings, and as human beings, we should care about others, at least to the point of everyone's well-being. I mean, I wasn't taught the extremes of children are seen and not heard type thing, and hell, I'm not even that graceful, but I can walk up and down the stairs, and unless I'm very loud high heels that the bottoms always make noise, just wearing shoes, I'm not often heard. Some of my kids' friends have just stomped through the house very loudly and very late, having no clue. It's like there's a mini general gap. Somewhere, maybe kids were not taught any choices of their own, including the little things like picking your favorite dessert for dinner or anything small that feels bigger to a small child will carry with them. Just in my opinion, my head's been trying to explain why there's so many out there that either don't care about others or just don't realize what it's like from someone else's point of view. I had this kind of situation before, and here is my trick. After a while, go to them and give them an opinion about why they such in dating. If possible, take someone's side and pin people against each other. It always works for me. Not the asshole. If the child was old enough to communicate effectively, then they are old enough for the parents to have instilled expected behavior. My daughter was speaking in full sentences at 20 months old. A 20-month-old cannot follow this type of expected behavior, being quiet for hours on end consistently. However, I see the kid in question was 4 to 5. Most 4 to 5-year-olds understand whispering and quiet voice, so that is different. K2 teacher here, this just is not true. An overseas international flight is not something a typical family can fully prepare their young kids for. There isn't really anything comparable that they come across with any sort of regularity. Remember, it's not just the flight. Original poster is talking about the kid a few hours into a flight. What's not being considered is the hours of pre-flight shit that had to happen. I'm sure there are kids out there that can handle it. As things go, this kid just talking itiki, that doesn't seem so bad, all other possibilities considered. Go ahead and Google what age children develop reasoning abilities. Not the asshole. But then, I have no patience for parents who don't try to teach their kid appropriate behaviors for airplanes and such. For real. I'm surprised by all of the YTS. I remember being told, use your inside voice. Shh. You're distracting people, and so on as a kid. Kids aren't always aware of how loud they're being, which is why the parents need to remind them. If the kid is old enough to speak in full sentences, they're old enough to understand a parent telling them they need to keep their voice down. It sounds like these parents just didn't bother trying. I mean, toddlers are the worst age to actually listen and not throw a tantrum, but I want to see that the parents are trying their best. Maybe they thought talking is less disruptive than a temper tantrum and just wanted toddler to get sleepy. But still, it's necessary to at least try to explain that he needs to be quiet because people are sleeping. Here's the thing. As a parent, I try every goddamn day. Doesn't mean my kids aren't going to test boundaries and do whatever it is anyway. It might be unconventional, but I actually rely on interactions like original posters so my kids get it. There's only but so much I can warn and tell and teach. Sometimes they just have to learn by experience. I mean, my parents taught me not to speed while driving, but it didn't stop me from getting a ticket. Or 7. Sure, that's not how the people in this example responded, just adding on that it's not necessarily for lack of trying, and some of us are actually grateful for the "it takes a village" approach. Not the asshole you didn't expect the kid to magically fall asleep or even not make any noise. You expected the parents to teach their kid to be quieter when lights are off and others are resting. Not a ridiculous ask, which shouldn't have even needed to be asked. This. People who are saying that original poster is a hole are purposely exaggerating to twist the narrative. Original poster didn't ask for the child to be asleep. Original poster didn't ask for the child to be silent. Original poster didn't ask for the child to not say a word. Original poster asked for reduced volume. That is absolutely reasonable, not the asshole. Side note, I, an adult, struggle to hear myself. I was given the stare in the past. Did I stop talking? No, I just lowered my voice and the stare stopped. It's a reasonable exchange to have in a public space to find a comfortable medium. Completely agree. All these parents talking about you can't force your child to sleep. True and valid. But what you can do is pack them plenty of activities they can do quietly in case they have trouble sleeping, and remind them that other people are trying to sleep, so they need to be respectful. I remember having quiet time in preschool/kindergarten and understanding full well that if I didn't want to sleep, that was fine, but I wasn't going to be allowed to make noise or bother the other kids. Not the asshole. There's a difference between the parents making a reasonable attempt at keeping the child reasonably silent in the context and not making that attempt whatsoever, which is how it is coming off via your description. A key role of parenting is moderating the behavior of children to suit reasonable expectations in a wider society, and on a plane, it's definitely not polite to speak loudly. As someone who worked in daycare up until recently, I can say one of my biggest pet peeves with modern parenting is not teaching children how to use inside voices or regulate their noise. Yes, it can be age appropriate, but it seems in recent years that those kinds of behaviors go on way too long, making it harder to adjust as they age. I'd venture to guess that part of the problem is all the tablet kids watching too many overstimulating YouTube Kids videos of people overacting and being loud and animated, then mimicking those same behaviors. I would say not the asshole. If the kid can speak in full sentences, they should be able to use an inside voice. But I doubt they were taught that by their parents. So not really the kid's fault, but still, definitely not asshole behavior to expect kids to moderate their volume if they're old enough and don't have neurodivergent behaviors inhibiting those self-regulation skills. This. I don't know why all these responses are "you're the asshole" because it's a reasonable request. And even that makes more sense than the people saying not the asshole because the kid should just be quiet. It doesn't hurt to ask. Perhaps original posters should have gone about it in a slightly less rude manner, but that makes them tired and grumpy. Not necessarily the parents shouldn't necessarily be expected to quiet their 4-year-old, but they can reasonably be expected to try. Remember, inside voice Johnny. Not the asshole. The first airline to introduce adults-only flights will get my loyalty for life. We sometimes fly on Breeze Airways and they have family seating in the back of the plane. It's an absolute win-win. Everyone else needs to pay to pick a seat, but if you are traveling with kids, you can pick seats in the family seating area for free. It's so nice sitting back there with a bunch of other families with kids. Everyone is so friendly and understanding and helpful. And then the people who don't want to be around kids can sit in the front of the plane. I'm sure they are very happy about the arrangement as well. And then some, and I'm a parent and grandparent. The cost for the tickets would be business class level minimum. Everyone says this, but I guarantee you that airlines would not hesitate to sell an adult-only flight to you if it was remotely worth the money. People say they want this and would pay extra for it and then go and buy the cheapest tickets they can. I would be happier with quiet flights. Most parents wouldn't bring babies to those, and hopefully those annoying, talkative, loud, chatty adults won't take those flights either. Thank you very much for watching. Put likes, write comments, and wait for new videos on the channel.